All right, we have, I don't know how many talks today, but at least 8 and maybe as many as 10. But I want to welcome you all to, and not impromptu, but a last minute. And I've received, there's not enough time, but if you've been working in this field for 5 to 30 years or 40 years, you should be able to come up with something that you can present in 3 minutes or less. And so we do have 8 to 10 talks. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to do the online ones first, and we'll start with Shaunna Morrison, who wanted to be here but caught something that a lot of people catch and decided not to share, which we thank you, Shaunna. Tonight, starting at 4:30 in the Geology Museum with the tasting starting at 5, we'll have our chili cook-off. So we'll set up beginning around 4. Beverages are there. Students, if you are driving over, please check with Katanya. She will need help carrying chips and things like that. So if each of you carries a little bit, that will save us one person trying to do it all by themselves. So check with Katanya sometimes this afternoon before you head over and ask her what you can carry to the museum. Any other announcements? Okay. All right, our first talk is by Shaunna Morrison, who will be joining us in the fall. She is at Carnegie right now and finishing up as a research scientist. She started there as a postdoc, and I forget what year, probably 2017. But Shaunna is going to kick off the lightning round, and I do have a timer, and it will be set for 3 minutes. So Shaunna, I won't start it until you start talking.
They're probably at about 3.5, so, I might go a little 30 extra seconds. Okay, do you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome, fantastic. So, thank you all so much for being there. Thank you for that introduction, Jim. Me, I'm a mineralogist, I'm a crystallographer, and I'm a planetary scientist. So I like to think about Earth and our solar system and its big questions and mysteries through a mineralogical lens. So much of my work is harnessing the complexity of minerals via mineral informatics, specifically through data-driven exploration of evolving Earth and planetary systems. What? So I like to ask questions like, how have planets evolved through deep time, and what are the drivers of their similarities and their differences? How can we deconvolve and characterize the complex feedback systems between Earth's geosphere and biosphere? And what impact has life left on minerals, and how can we detect these mineralogical signs of life on other planets? Why minerals? To answer these huge, complex questions, well, not just because they're cool, although they are, it's because minerals are time capsules. They're the oldest physical samples of the ancient past, and they record how they formed. And why data science? To figure out what these time capsules are trying to tell us, because data science provides a systems scale view. It enables us to harness the multidimensional and interdisciplinary nature of these incredibly complex and information-rich systems. This approach has allowed us to move mineralogy from a largely descriptive field into a predictive one. We've been able to predict things like the number of missing mineral species yet to be discovered on Earth's surface. I predicted the locations of previously unknown mineral deposits in planetary analog environments. And I've characterized planetary scale biosignatures, as well as predicted the previously unknown formational environments of mineral samples. As you can imagine, this approach to research means I'm doing a lot of different types of projects in mineralogy and planetary science, and even some in data science. So these include things like characterizing Earth's evolution, specifically thinking about how it relates to plate tectonics and the supercontinent cycle, redox and other chemical changes and feedbacks, and life's role in changing the mineralogical and geochemical makeup of a planet. I work on the Chemin X-ray diffractometer on the Curiosity rover, and I'm developing crystal chemical machine learning methods for predicting mineral composition on Mars and for future spacecraft missions. Understanding the composition of minerals on other planets will tell us how those planets formed and evolved through deep time. I'm using association rules to predict where to find new mineral deposits, which are of great interest to mining companies and governments who are looking for natural resources to use in green technology. And I'm working to characterize all known mineralizing environments, which is a big task, all the environments and all the processes, so that we can understand all of the stages of planetary evolution and therefore make predictions about the conditions of ancient environments. Using cluster analysis and geochemical data to develop models that can classify the formational environment of mineral samples of unknown origin, including whether or not there is biogenic input into that formation. And related to that work, I'm conducting many studies to understand life's influence on Earth's mineralogy. In addition to predicting a sample's formation based on geochemistry, I'm developing statistical models in the diversity and distribution of minerals across the planet, and using network analysis to explore the complex feedback systems between life and minerals. And much of this work is moving towards developing mineral biosignatures for planetary exploration. And again, I'm looking for these mineralogical signs of life at all scales, from the planetary scale to the microscopic. So in my view, these projects they're really just the tip of the iceberg. And the next era of mineralogical science and really Earth and planetary science as a whole is data-driven, employing powerful predictive machine learning methods. It's integrated across many different disciplines of science, and it embraces the complex multidimensionality of our natural systems. Thank you.
3.5 minutes, you were right. Why don't we hold questions to the end?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
You're going.
Okay. So anyway, so I was just apologizing for not being there in person. So I'm just going to give a very, very brief overview. And unlike Shaunna, I've not timed my talk to the nearest second. I just threw this together this morning. So briefly, this is my lab group right now. We have 2 postdocs, both of whom sit at Wright, Praveen Kumar and Yucheng Lin. 3 grad students, none of whom are in EPS, 2 are in atmospheric science, and 1 is at Blaustein. A research software engineer, Alex Reedy, who sits at Wright, and a program coordinator, and then a very involved former student, now postdoc at UI, Roger Creel. So our work in our groups falls into 5 main buckets. The first, which I think is why the department hired me in the first place 13 years ago, is I work on past sea level change. So examples of things we do are use geological data sets and modern statistical machine learning approaches to tease out spatial signatures and global average sea level signatures of sea level change. These are 2 examples, one on the left from Roger's work, looking at reconstruction of sea level over the particularly the middle to late Holocene. Another, an update of work we've been doing for the last 9 years is sort of a common era sea level curve. And Yucheng is working on taking our techniques and putting them into an easy to use software package for spatial temporal modeling. And he's teaching a workshop, a day-long workshop in a week or 2. So if you're interested and haven't signed up for that, you should find out more. Another major area we work on are future sea level change. So Rutgers, together with Amy Slingen's group in the Netherlands, sort of underlied a lot of the work in the sea level projections in the last IPCC assessment report. And I am one of the co-leads of the next round of the NASA sea level change team. So this is just some examples of this, but we look at how you tie together a whole bunch of different lines of observational and modeling evidence to produce sea level projections that both can inform other science and are usable for decision makers. And you can see, if you go to the links on the bottom left, you can see more information on some of what we've done. Third area that I've been involved with for the last 1.5 decades or so is the economic risks of climate and sea level change. So we co-lead together with partners at Chicago and Berkeley a collaboration called the Climate Impact Lab, which is focused on using large data sets of socioeconomic observations and climate data to better understand the economic costs of climate change. And so our work in the Climate Impact Lab provides like both very spatially resolved information, but also underlies sort of key aggregate policy metrics like the US government social cost of carbon. Something that's taken up a lot of my time the last 2 years is a NSF Coastlines and People Hub that we laid out of Rutgers, a megalopolitan coastal transformation hub, which is a collaboration of 13 institutions focused on usable and use-inspired science for climate adaptation. So within MOC, We seek to do science that is useful and used for climate adaptation, while also seeking to advance the human understanding, scientific understanding of how climate hazards, landforms, and decisions at scales from household level to municipal level to policy and market scales interact to shape climate risk, while also training students and postdocs to do both of these things and sort of sorting out some of the challenges involved in achieving these sometimes conflicting goals. And finally, I've also been giving a lot of thought over the last several years to the role of higher education in addressing the climate crisis and its multitudes of forms. Many of you know, until recently, I was one of the founding directors of the University Office of Climate Action. And we worked with the White House and with the University of Washington and other schools to organize this forum last year on how basically higher education can be better mobilized through our work on our operations, through work on engaged research and teaching, through workforce development, and through living labs to advance national and global climate goals. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, thank you. My 3-minute elevator talk here is to acknowledge that there are a number of people here at Rutgers, myself, Ken, Jim Browning, Aldiar, and John, who have worked for years in compiling a study that is focused around studying since the base of the Oligocene, the record of sea level change on the mid-Atlantic margin. And we're focusing offshore New Jersey, because that's where a good part of the data are located. And the most recent addition to our data set has been a 3D volume of multi-channel imaging. And it's that yellow box there in the middle of the continental shelf off of Atlantic City. And to the right there are images that Al has prepared that show at the top the center line of the MCS grid of 3D data, and that looks like a standard 2D MCS profile, but it's only one of thousands of sections through that volume. And I draw your attention to the turquoise horizon partway down that section, which is at about 250 meters of subsea floor depth. You're looking at about 500 meters of thickness here. And that turquoise surface then has a lot of rubbly surfaces to it that suggested to us have to do with incisions by subaerial or riverine processes, perhaps. And so Al has sliced along that turquoise line in the middle part of the slide there on the right, a color-enhanced issues showing changes in amplitudes at that surface. And the bottom third of that demonstration there is a duplicate of that same map view looking down on the grid. The white line in the middle is the center line profile shown in vertical sense at the top. And he's highlighted yellow fluvial channels, perhaps, and perhaps some nearshore features in white that are coming down from up your upper portion of that slide down towards the middle. That may indicate some shoreline strand lines. We're still working on trying to interpret those. But that gives you an idea of the kind of features that we're looking for here that may indicate the landward and seaward passage of shoreline through time in this 35 million year history recorded in this volume. And we're trying to integrate it with the core hole data that is there from many sources, the central of which are the numbers 27, 8, and 9 in that yellow box. And those are IODP Expedition 313 drill sites that several of us here at Rutgers participated in. And I think my 3 minutes is up to give you just a quick idea of one of the major projects that we're working on as a group.
Thank you very much. Right on time, so let me escape. I'll text with Rick in just a minute.
All right, let's start. All right, so in general, my research interests are really with studying the late Pleistocene. looking at changes in paleoclimate, paleooceanography related to ocean circulation changes, and in general isotope geochemistry. My analytical toolbox really is uranium thorium dating of fossil corals and speleothems by multi-collector ICP-MS, and stable isotope records generated using isotope ratio mass spectrometry, and all those analyses are done right here in the department. Current projects, the one I just returned from, the sampling party, which was held the month of February in Bremen, Germany. I'm a member of the science party for Expedition 389, which is drilling of the drowned Hawaiian coral reefs. You see a map on the right with some of the targets for drilling. The expedition was held in the fall, and material was covered spanning time period 15 to 450,000 years ago, based on preliminary dating. These are coral reefs that grew at the surface, but with subsidence of the island of Hawaii, they're now located 150 to 900 meters below present-day sea level. I'm particularly interested in the 25 to 60,000 time interval. We also will be collecting or receiving samples of the basalts, the lava flows for argon dating that I'll be working with Brent Turin here in the department, get better estimates of subsidence rates and the evolution of Hawaii volcanism. And there's also going to be the opportunity to use paired uranium, thorium, and radiocarbon dates for radiocarbon calibration. Next area of interest, for the last 8 years, I've been working with scientists in Florida, USGS, and Florida Atlantic University, dating late Holocene, so 2 to 4,000 year old samples collected by scuba, and using chemical process, geochemical proxies like oxygen isotopes and strontium calcium to reconstruct surface temperature. There's also the opportunity to reconstruct late Holocene storm, i.e. hurricane frequency. And I'm also working with scientists, USGS and Texas, Austin, reconstructing MIS 5A, approximately 85,000 years ago, from corals collected off the Florida Keys. It's not advanced, okay. Another area of interest, looking at high resolution records from corals collected off the coast of Bangladesh at St. Martin's Island, trying to answer questions: did the strength of the Indian monsoon vary during different climate extremes, like the medieval warm period or the Little Ice Age? Here's an example of a record, 2 samples per month. This is a 32-year record from a coral that grew in the 1700s, showing you these giant changes in oxygen and carbon isotopes driven by precipitation during the monsoon, either rainfall or riverine discharge. And all this work has really been generated by undergraduate researchers here in the department over the last 6 years. And finally, okay, climate reconstruction with speleothems. Do speleothems from Central and Western Pacific warm pool display variations that are in sync with changes in Greenland ice core, the Dansgaard-Oskard events, time period 35 to 45,000 years ago? Again, applying uranium thorium dating and stable isotopes. That's in collaboration with the University of Victoria in Wellington, New Zealand. And then closer to home, generating Holocene precipitation records from Southeast and Southwest Asia. Again, variations in the monsoon strength, and that's in collaboration with Mick Griffiths at William Patterson University. Thank you.
All right. Rick did mention something that Ben asked me to mention, and I forgot to at the beginning. In each of these talks at the end, you don't have to include it, but if there's the opportunity for undergraduates to join in, and please go ahead and give a quick shout out to talk to you during this. But Rick mentioned that many undergraduates have come through the labs working on these projects, and I'm pretty sure it is that case for almost all of us. All right. Right now, I think we're on Ken Miller. Let's see if I can do this right. Am I still shared?
Yep, you might need to adjust the share a little bit, but
Why?
it might show the presenter view on Zoom this way.
No, it's good there.
So I'm glad Greg was able to zoom in and present this third one. I'm not going to talk, but I wanted to mention about one of the projects we just got funded that is funding John Schmelzer in the next few years with Battelle from the DOE for offshore carbon storage and sequestration in Cretaceous Strait off New Jersey. I also want to give a shout out to Sean Kinney, who we support as part of the core repository, who set up an amazing facility using with this Minolizer CS XRF scanner, and this just involves a whole boatload. I can't say shitload. A boatload of undergraduates and graduate students in the lab, and so we're always looking for people to help out, and it's a great project. And of course, Greg talked about the other. What I wanted to talk to you about is something pretty familiar in this department, which is the PETM, standing for the Paleocene Eocene Thermal Maximum. And we now have a proposal likely to get supported the second time around. We sexied up the name to be PEP-US. You need a good acronym. Paleogene Earth Perturbations, and is co-led with my Marcy Robinson from the USGS. You may recognize Morgan Schaller, former graduate student, now at RPI. Tali Babila, former graduate student in 8 years, who just started at CASE, and Marlo Kramwinkle, an ECR, early career researcher from. So we're really trying to involve the next generation in this drilling. So this is going to fund about $2 million worth of drilling, focusing on the PETM here in the Mid-Atlantic coastal plain. This is the New Jersey portion of the coastal plain. That's where these records are from. Soundbite on the PETM is this large carbon isotopic excursion, which represents at least 3,500 gigatons of release of carbon in less than 4,000 years. That's 350 years of human emissions, just in terms of scale. This is a massive release. How fast it is quite controversial. And we are going to study this. So this looks like a really thick section, right? I mean, it's 15 plus meters. If we go into the deep sea, it's about 1 meter. So the advantage of these areas onshore is that they're very expanded, and this is all of 200,000 years at most. So these are quite expanded records for climate change. We're going to be drilling a series of transects in New Jersey, Delaware. We actually drilled in Sandtown and involved a bunch of undergraduates this past summer, and what we dubbed, again, stole the term, School of Rock. So we were drilling with the opportunity we had over a dozen graduates and undergraduates from all over the place involved in Sandtown. So Brian Lee, an undergraduate here, is actually taking the lead on doing the strontium isotopes and the Miocene stratigraphy there, and that's a hell of a thesis. And we're going to be drilling, again, 10 sites over the next couple years. This is the menu. USGS drillers will be doing the drilling, except for Sandtown DGS, Delaware Geological Survey, and in my hometown of Medford, here at Bob Meyer Park. Hopefully we'll drill next October, a fairly shallow site. Again, just a list of the people. These are the PIs. One of the things we want to justify is, well, Ken, yeah, all kinds of cores over there. Why do you need to drill more? And one of the reasons why is that we need to get the existing cores are particularly depleted. Jim Wright has come over and taken way too many samples, and so there's nothing left, and other people too. And so
there's no record of that.
There's no record of that. Just because he has a key and get in there at midnight, you see? I got to change the keys on the core repository. But there's also in terms of training, we were going to go with commercial drillers, and we realized this summer when we were drilling with unlinered cores and the students were getting to describe these things in the field, that this was a truly unique opportunity to train the next generation and how to interpret things in the field and not just back at the shack. So that's it.
Let's see who's up next. Oh, me.
Who's timing you?
Me. I had it at 2:57 earlier. Reset, start. All right, it's a pleasure to be here. In 2019, I sailed with my co-PI Neil Slowey from Texas A&M to the southern Argentine margin. On this cruise, we collected 4,000 kilometers of high-resolution seismic, shown by the red lines there, and occupied 62 coring stations, where we collected 380 meters of sediment, shown by the blue dots. Maya Stefanali is working with me. She's doing grain size and biogenic opal accumulation on the deep drift. Tim Seamus is trying to source the terrigenous sediments using geochemistry and XRD. Jose Azola sailed as a PhD student and is now a postdoc working on this, pretty much coordinating the whole project. Ronan Keating is taking the lead on stable isotopes of foraminifera, and Mashad Abbasan, oh, I blew it, is doing high-resolution multi-channel seismics and the deep drift. This is one of the seismic images there. It's about 4,000 meters depth. It's called the Valentin-Fielberg drift. And one of the things we noticed in the seismic character is that there's this rhythmic pattern in the seismic reflections. So we took it and made a composite section, converted it from two-way travel time into depth, and we did power series spectra on it, and we saw power in the 40 meter and in the 10 meter range. We assigned the long and short eccentricity cycles to that, assuming 400,000 years long, 100,000 years short, and we're able to come up with an age model for our composite section right in here. And we compare our composite seismic wiggles here with the eccentricity, and we see some correlations, some things that were important. But if we apply this age model to the drift record that we show in the upper left here, we see two things. Drift accumulation started at 14 million years ago, which coincides with the development of the permanent Antarctic ice sheet. And there was a major change in drift accumulation right at 7.5 using this age model. Now, 7.5 million years is intriguing to me. Chapter 1 of my dissertation, some 30 plus years ago, talked about the evolution of deep water delta C13 gradient starting at 7.5 million years ago, shown right here. And then in a paper in 2003, Carrie Lear was a postdoc working with Yair and me, and she showed that the difference between the deep Atlantic temperature salinity and the deep Pacific temperature salinity changed starting around 8 million years ago. So in conclusion, sedimentation on the Valentin-Fielberg drift started right at 14 million years ago with the development of the permanent Antarctic ice sheet. It's been remarkably consistent for 12 million years. It's dominated by the 100 and 400 kiloyear cycles, telling me that there's a direct link to Earth's carbon cycle. And at 7.5 million years, modern deep water circulation evolved. It's likely related to the severing the deep connection of the Central American Isthmus. Shoot, I went over. All right. Let's see. Dan, you're up next.
So, hi everyone. I'm Ben Black, and I'm going to be talking quickly about the research we do in the Rutgers Volcano Lab, which right now includes me, and then from left to right in this photo, and sitting over here, Holly Valgerton, Lev Yukna-Parsons, and James Iguchi, who's sitting over here. And this is a photo from fieldwork in the Columbia River basalts this summer, which is a nice introduction of one of the first focuses of our research, which is volatile release from these enormous flood basalt provinces and how those impact climate. And so this is an area where there are opportunities for undergrads to get involved, often starting with petrology class and then feeding into more independent work. Okay. So the second research focus for us, first I talked about volatile release during these big volcanic events and how those impact climate, but we're also interested in how Earth's climate recovers after major carbon cycle disruptions. And so there's a lot going on in this figure, but we're funded through the NSF FRES program to, what this figure really shows is that after some flood basalt provinces, climate stays warm for surprisingly long. And so we're part of a big interdisciplinary team, 7 institutions, trying to understand what is happening during these recovery intervals. Okay, so another direction for us is the volatile evolution of the terrestrial planets, really on billion-year timescales. So this is, to me, an amazing photo that James has taken. This is a glassy melt inclusion inside a 2.7 billion year old komatiite. So that glass has been there for 2.7 billion years. That bubble has been there for 2.7 billion years. That is totally mind-blowing. And we can use this then to actually get directly probe Earth's mantle in the Archean, which is incredible. I did want to mention another direction that we're working on is trying to understand volcanic hazards at subduction zones, partly through participation in community-wide efforts like SC4D. And so this is a figure from a workshop proposal that was recently recommended. So we're going to run a workshop on connections between mantle magma supply, which is surprisingly a big unknown, and how that influences the behavior of volcanoes at the surface. And then lastly, a more planetary aspect. We're interested in how impacts can generate melting. Impacts were a very common process early in the solar system's history. And so how have those impact-generated magmas shaped the terrestrial planets? So if you're interested about any of these topics, I'm sure any of us would be happy to chat more. But yeah, and I'm enjoying hearing about what everyone else is working on. Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. That's Greg. Catherine. You are going to, unless there's someone else, you are our last, but not least, speaker.
Excellent. I might put this on
Oh,
because
wait,
I'm softly
let's,
spoken. Is this
go-
work?
Yes, that's what they're hearing you online with. And let me,
Okay. No, that's fine. Anyway. Okay, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to walk you through some of the recent findings that we've had on a particular topic. When did volatiles come to Earth? And volatiles, I mean water, carbon, things like that. Yes, it is hand-drawn, one of the students pointed out, because we're going down to simple basics, trying to get across something that can be quite complicated to understand. So when we think about how the Earth formed, we have to remember that the Earth formed from the sequential addition of large impactors that were derived from various heliocentric distances. So when we're building a protoplanet that you see here, we have these objects coming in from different parts of our solar system. When we have a proto-Earth that has developed, that there is a core, there was a Theia, Mars-sized object that hit the Earth, and it developed the Earth-Moon system, and final core formation happened on both bodies. How do we access the composition of these building blocks when they have gone to make planets? There's nothing really left. Well, we can do so by looking at asteroids. Asteroids are the leftover of planet formation. Meteorite sample asteroids, so our basic logic is meteorites are the best proxies that we have access to for Earth's building blocks. So what are our tools? Our tools are meteorites, they are Earth rocks, and they are a special chemical fingerprint these share that are called molybdenum isotope genetic signatures. Now these signatures are formed through the heterogeneous distribution of stardust or pre-solar grains in the protoplanetary disk. So here we have a cross-section of our sun and the protoplanetary disk with the stardust distributed as these little different colored dots. Now asteroids form from this material. Asteroids sampled by meteorites, we measure the meteorites in the laboratory and we have found that there is a heterogeneous distribution of the stardust in meteorites and therefore they're asteroids. On a broader solar system scale, by analysing lots of different types of meteorites, we see that there is actually a bimodal distribution of these isotopes. There is a distribution of isotopes in the outer solar system we nickname NCC, that is slightly different to the inner solar system distribution of pre-solar grains that we nickname NC. So if we are able to determine the character, the NC or CC character composition of a meteorite, we can cosmolocate and infer that location of accretion as either inner or outer solar system. So what do? We take a meteorite, we take an earth rock, maybe from an ocean island basalt or a morb, we dissolve that rock and we isolate molybdenum in a laboratory, and then we see whether or not, at high precision, so ppm scale, the meteorite composition matches that of the Earth composition. And in doing so, if it does, well, eureka, we are able to infer a composition of the genetic material that was feeding the asteroid that made the meteorite. We can infer that same genetic material was helping build Earth. Now, in doing so, we have analysed a number of different terrestrial samples and extraterrestrial samples, and we have found that the dominant building blocks building up Earth before the moon forming event and especially during the moon forming event were dominated by an NC genetic feature. The implication is that the volatiles likely were delivered early before these events, and they were resilient to these large-scale impact events building our planet. Maybe during nebula ingassing, the phase where the nebula is feeding our planet some mass, this is where we got some of our volatiles. But open questions remain, such as how many volatiles and what nature were they in NC bodies to begin with? How much water could have potentially come in, and we're not thinking about that yet. In addition, could some volatiles arrive after the moon forming event? For this, we need some other isotope studies that we're doing, so stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Shaun here? Oh, I couldn't download it, so that's why I didn't have it on my screen. But is there a way Shaun has that slide, but I wasn't able to get it into Box. Matt.
Yes.
He has it on his computer. What can we do?
You have a flash drive?
Maybe.
So do you hold up the computer?
I can just hold your laptop up like this.
I do have, the answer is I do have a flash drive. I don't know where it is.
Okay.
Just hold it up.
Yeah, let's do that.
Can you share your disk and pick it up off of there?
What? Hey, Jim. Well, Shaun is looking. Can
Yes.
Yeah.
Katherine.
We're just going to make a quick announcement.
So do it here so that they can hear you.
Okay.
While we're getting ready for the next speaker, Ben and I just wanted to announce that we're going to have a new seminar series, and it is called
PICO, Planetary Interiors Colloquium. And you can imagine the word lunch silently in there.
So it's happening during the time Cosmos Cafe is usually on, so 12:30 at different points in the rest of the semester. And we're going to talk about things from the deep earth through to a little bit of meteorites as well. And you are all welcome to join us. We have our first speaker this week.
Yeah, so Kate Kisieva, who's a new curator at the American Museum of Natural History, is going to be talking about diamonds in the deep earth. And so, in general, I think it's going to be more informal than this colloquium. We're going to be sitting, we'll have pizza, there's a chance to just chat with these speakers, and I think it should be I think it will be a fun thing. So this semester we have
Kerry Corrigan, we have Loic
van der Kluisen from Drexel, who works on large igneous provinces.
Kerry Corrigan is one of the curators at the Smithsonian, who's an expert in meteorites. And then we have
Francisco Appen, who's a postdoctoral researcher at Princeton, working on mantle xenoliths and how those record the billion-year history of the continents.
And then Kate this Friday.
Exactly.
So we will send you out the dates. There is an announcement that's been made with news of the chair. It is this Friday, room 142A at 12:30 for an hour. And then you are all welcome to join, undergrads, grads, and faculty, and everyone in between. So please come by.
Yeah, and stay tuned also for
The
future
future
ones. They'll
the
always be on
remaining three.
Fridays. Yeah.
Yes.
Question.
Which week is Dr. Blake Vanderclose presenting?
I think he's April 5th, but I have to check.
Yes. The dates were sent out in news of the chair earlier. All right, so I think we can now go over to Sean.
Oh, perfect. It was worth it, right? It's a nice video. Yeah. All right. So as Ken had mentioned, I'm in charge of various projects, nominally leading, by no means the main driver. We have lots and lots of different folks involved, undergraduates, graduates. I just checked when Ken mentioned that. We've had 20 undergraduates and 8 graduate students who have in some way participated in projects that we have at the repository since we really got started in March of 2022, I would say, is when we really started to ramp up. I'm not going to read all of these topics of interest that I listed. They're by no means exhaustive, but one of the things that I will say is that the instrument that we have, which is kind of, I'm viewing that as the first major analytical instrument that's currently at the facility, part of a nascent strategic partnership with the company who makes it. But it's not the first, and if there are other faculty, other students who think of some analytical need for a research question that they have, I'm definitely interested in collaborating on instrumentation proposals to NSF as one example, as well as other ideas that I have. In terms of what we are doing with that instrument, we can take high-resolution color photographs of cores, but also of other things as well. We could do continuous XRF geochemistry, major and trace elements. That, of course, depends on the concentration of the element in the material that we're measuring, and how good of those measurements are depend on how good the calibration is, but that's all things that can be customized. We can also produce 3D point clouds, which can get us structural data, and we just got installed in November and are more or less up and running with a larger version. If you were at the repository prior to November 22 but haven't been back since, this is just a larger version of the instrument that was there previously, but importantly, we can accommodate large core boxes, which is the state of many legacy core projects in the United States and North America in particular. And we also have, I wrote a grant a couple years ago, a handheld laser-induced breakdown spectrometer, which basically does everything that XRF can do, but can measure the concentrations of elements as light as lithium, and this is a very common tool in the lithium exploration industry. These are just some photos of different things that we've been doing. David, pointing to himself in the back, is in a lot of these. But it's been a good opportunity for undergraduates to contribute to both research, but also to get education, as both informally and formally. We host a lot of different groups there. This is just from the bottom left. We had some folks visiting on, was that Monday? To talk about environmental geoscience projects that we're working on, but also meetings and other groups. And if you're interested in coming over to the repository, Ben's had petrology over, so I encourage you, if you think that looking at cores and maybe producing some measurements of your own could be useful, please reach out to me. So I'm just going to talk very briefly as just kind of advertisements for things that we're doing. This is one of our major projects, which is part of a multi-project consortium called the Cyclo-Astro Project, supported by the Heising-Simons Foundation. The official name of our project is Solar System Dynamics from, let me get these animations to play, Solar System Dynamics from Continental Climate Rhythms, 200 to 240 million years ago. And the main crux of this is to look at ancient Milankovitch cycles. So most people are probably familiar with periodic changes in Earth's orbit due to eccentricity, obliquity, and precession, but there are also longer time scale, lower frequency modulations of those Milankovitch cycles that we see expressed through changes in climate, which affect changes in depositional systems, which ultimately produce the stratigraphic architecture that we can observe today. So what we're interested in is applying new analytical techniques to generate new proxies to understand how astronomically paced climate has changed. In the record that we're dealing with from the Newark Basin, it's what our major project is, that has typically been looked at through semi-quantitative and really qualitative changes in sedimentary fabric and how that reflects relative lake depth. What we're doing is we're applying chemistry. So this is the Newark Basin Coring Project. This is a legacy coring project. If you've been to the core repository, you've seen these boxes. This was a project from about 1989 to 94 by Paul Olson and Dennis Kent, who's an emeritus professor here. There's about 7 kilometers worth of core that represents about 30 million years of time. And I'm just going to show you one example of how what we've been doing is useful. This is from the Rutgers core, which was drilled on Livingston campus. This is number 1 here, this little box is an interval of time where there is no variability in the traditionally used depth rank proxy. You can't see any change in climate. There's no information that's there. Number 2 is an interval with relatively high variability in depth rank. And these are just some examples of how chemistry is seeing those changes in the precession scale cycle that is present. And you can see it's actually much better developed in the interval of no variability than that of high variability for the elements that are plotted here. Another project that I want to highlight is something that is currently has a $1.5 million commitment from the International Continental Scientific Drilling Program. And we just submitted a FRES proposal in February to NSF, that's Frontier Research in Earth Science. And this is a multi-institution collaboration, including a group from Rutgers, including Ken, Paul Falkowski, and Costantino Vetriani, where Ken said we needed a good acronym. This is really, if you're familiar with the Colorado Plateau Coring Project, this is Colorado Plateau Coring Project 2, but the acronym is HITEMP, which stands for Hydrogeologic Impacts of Terrestrial Expressions of Mesozoic Paleoclimate. I actually think it's Mesozoic perturbations, but same idea, where we're trying to look at how major events in Earth's history, like large igneous province volcanism, and you can see just plotted here, the Siberian Traps, Rangelia, Camp, the Karoo, how that affects climate, how climate is affecting the organization of depositional systems in the ancient environment, how that structures the stratigraphic environment, and how that ultimately structures the modern hydrogeologic environment and serves to mobilize or immobilize things like geogenic contaminants. As a part of this project, we're working really closely with Navajo Tech and the N4WPP project, which is developing large-scale both windmill well and municipal well scale water filtration systems, and we're going to be using holes that are planned as a part of this project to test that out in deep saline aquifers. We're also looking at applying new isotopic fingerprints to try and understand uranium cycling in groundwater systems on the Navajo Nation and the Colorado Plateau, which is itself one of the world's largest uranium provinces. And these are just some field scenes from mostly the last year of things that we've been doing in our group. So, thanks.
Should we have questions?
Are there any? We're a little bit late, but we're always around in the department, so if you saw something you want to go further into or see if you can join a research group, please find them. All of us are accessible. And I think all of the speakers today, you got a little bit of a cross-section of what we're doing in the department. And thank you and enjoy and please come to the chili cook-off at 4:30 in the Geology Museum. So see you around.